Hello and welcome to Synthetic History, where the past speaks again, but not through dusty archives or faded manuscripts. Here, we use generative AI tools to resurrect history's lost stories, forgotten places, silenced voices, and the echoes of time itself. This isn't just storytelling, it's a collaboration between human researchers and AI agents, weaving together historical fact and imagination with precision. Every episode is a bridge between what was and what could be remembered. And now, let's begin. Here's our new episode. What happens when faith is tested, not in private, but in the public square? When standing for truth comes at a cost, and silence feels safer? In Nazi Germany, churches faced a choice: speak out or stay silent. Resist or conform. Some stood courageously against injustice, risking prison and death. Others reshaped faith to fit ideology, aligning themselves with Hitler's vision. Most simply looked away. But history has a way of repeating itself. When power demands allegiance over truth, when compromise feels more convenient than conviction, we must ask ourselves, what would we have done? And what will we do now? This season on Synthetic History, we explore the stories of ordinary people, pastors, factory workers, students, who wrestled with faith, fear, and the choices that shaped a generation. While some figures are fictional, their struggles are deeply rooted in historical reality, drawing from in-depth research by AI agents and human co-authors. Join us as we uncover the moral dilemmas of the past, dilemmas that still echo today.
Episode 2: The Teacher and the Swastika. Berlin, March 1933. Elizabeth Bauer unlocked the door to her classroom, the hinges creaking as she stepped inside. The morning sun slanted through the tall windows, casting golden light over the wooden desks, each neatly arranged in rows. She inhaled deeply, trying to shake the unease in her stomach. Outside, a fresh poster of the newly appointed Chancellor Adolf Hitler had replaced the old portrait of Goethe that once hung there. His stern gaze seemed to follow her movements. How quickly things change. Something had changed. She could feel it in the city, in the hurried whispers at the market, in the way people avoided eye contact in the streets. The Reichstag fire just a month ago had given Hitler the pretext to suspend civil liberties through the Reichstag fire decree. Now, the enabling act was being prepared, which would grant Hitler dictatorial powers. But most of all, she felt it here, in the school, where she had taught for the past 10 years. This was the first day of the new Reich-approved curriculum. Her fingers brushed the stack of new textbooks on her desk, bound in black and red, the covers emblazoned with an iron eagle clutching a swastika. The Ministry of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda, already exercising control over virtually every form of expression, had issued its first educational decree just days ago, demanding that German culture must be treated thoroughly. She turned to the first page. Germany's future belongs to its strong, pure people. We must defend our nation from all those who seek to corrupt and weaken it. Elizabeth clenched her jaw. The language was different from before. The phrasing sharper, the words colder. The old history books spoke of kings and philosophers, of art and science, of wars fought and lost. Now they spoke of racial purity, of Germany's destiny, of enemies within. Biology had become race science, and geography was now geopolitics, focused on the fatherland and its territorial claims, and God was barely mentioned at all. When he was, it was in service to the state, not the other way around. She closed the book and swallowed hard. She didn't sign up for this, but refusing to teach it, she knew what that could cost her. Already, Professors and teachers who opposed the Nazi agenda were being dismissed from their positions. She had heard that some of her colleagues at other schools had received visits from SA men after parents reported their insufficient enthusiasm for the new regime. A new Germany in the classroom. As the school bell rang, students shuffled inside, their chatter filling the room. Several boys wore armbands of the Deutsches Jungvolk, the junior branch of the Hitler Youth, though it wasn't yet mandatory. Physical education had already been expanded to 15% of school time, part of the Nazi emphasis on creating physically fit and healthy children. Boys ready to become soldiers, girls prepared for healthy childbirth. The Reich Church's new education directive made it clear obedience to the Führer is obedience to God. Among them was Lotte Wagner, a bright, inquisitive 10-year-old with pigtails and sharp blue eyes. She had always been one of Elizabeth's best students, curious, thoughtful. Elizabeth had taught her since she was 7 and had watched her mind bloom with questions and insights. Elizabeth forced a smile. Guten Morgen, class. Heil Hitler. The words echoed back at her from nearly every child in the room, arms extended in the Nazi salute. Elizabeth's breath caught in her throat. For the first time, they had greeted her with the Nazi salute. In Austria, this would soon become standard practice, with traditional religious greetings like Grüß Gott being replaced by Heil Hitler in schools. It had happened so quickly. A month ago, they had simply said, Guten Morgen, Fräulein Bauer. Now, they were speaking as if the Reich itself sat at the front of the classroom. She hesitated for only a moment, then forced herself to nod. Guten Morgen, class. Please be seated. She deliberately avoided returning their salute, an omission she hoped would not be noticed. She moved to the chalkboard, picking up a piece of white chalk with fingers that felt numb. Today's lesson? History. The lesson in the book. Elizabeth opened the new textbook, her hands steady even though her heart pounded. If I refuse, I lose my job. If I comply, I betray my conscience. She would just read it. She wouldn't add her own thoughts. She wouldn't contradict it. Like many teachers across Germany, she was now expected to indoctrinate rather than educate, simply having students copy down information without questioning or debating any Nazi teachings. She would just get through it. Her eyes scanned the page. The weak and impure nations seek to destroy Germany from within, but we, as the chosen people of Europe, must stand strong together. The Führer leads us in the footsteps of our greatest ancestors, building a new Reich that will last 1,000 years. The words echoed the growing sentiment within the Nazi movement to cleanse even Christianity itself of Jewish influences. She had heard rumours of an institute being established to rewrite Christian texts, removing Hebrew terms and even claiming Jesus was not Jewish. Elizabeth stopped. She looked up at her students, waiting expectantly. She was supposed to explain this to them, to tell them that this was truth. Instead, she heard herself ask, "Who can tell me what this passage means?" A boy in the front row raised his hand eagerly, Friedrich Meissner. His father was a party member, recently promoted in the civil service after several Jewish employees had been dismissed under the new civil service law. It means we are the best and other people want to destroy us. A murmur of agreement rippled through the class. Already, these children were absorbing the nationalism and xenophobia that had become state doctrine. Lotte, sitting near the back, raised her hand hesitantly. But, Fräulein Bauer, didn't Jesus say we should love our enemies? A sharp intake of breath. Friedrich turned to her, sneering. That sounds like something a Jew would say. Silence. Elizabeth's pulse quickened. every eye turned to her. This was a dangerous moment. Similar questions had already cost teachers their positions. In Norway, teachers would eventually organise mass resistance against Nazi ideology in the classroom, but many would pay with torture and imprisonment. She felt two paths open before her: affirm Lotta's words and risk being seen as opposing the new ideology, or ignore the question and let the class absorb the lesson without challenge. Her voice came out softer than she intended. Yes, Lotta. That is what Jesus said. She saw a few children shift uncomfortably. Others simply nodded, not fully understanding why this moment mattered. But Friedrich's brow furrowed, and Elizabeth knew in that moment she had made an enemy. 1/4 of teachers were already Nazi Party members in the early 1930s, and students from party families were often the most vigilant reporters of unpatriotic teaching. The warning. That afternoon, as Elizabeth gathered her things, she heard the sharp sound of heels clicking on tile. The headmaster's voice was low and measured. Fräulein Bauer, a word. She turned to face Herr Schneider, a man who had been little more than a bureaucrat before, but now, like so many others, had found new authority under the Reich. He wore a small Nazi party pin on his lapel, one of the 25% of teachers who had joined the party before Hitler even took power. "A parent has expressed concern about today's lesson," he said, "a concern about your interpretation of the new curriculum." He leaned in slightly. "Your predecessor in the mathematics department also had concerns. He failed to understand the direction of the new Germany. You wouldn't want to make the same mistake." Elizabeth's stomach turned cold. The speed with which information travelled from classroom to party offices was breathtaking. "I only read from the book," she said carefully. "Yes," Schneider said, "but you also entertained unapproved perspectives, something about loving one's enemies. This contradicts our national revival. Germany has too many enemies to love them all." He clasped his hands behind his back. "Surely you understand the importance of unity in these times. The Ministry of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda has made it clear that education must serve the state. Your predecessor in the mathematics department failed to understand this. He questioned a problem about calculating bomb trajectories. He is no longer with us." A warning, a quiet, polite threat. Non-party members were already being systematically removed from teaching positions across Germany. "I understand," Schneider smiled. "Good. Then I trust we will have no more misunderstandings. Remember, we need strong minds and bodies for the fatherland. That is your duty now." Elizabeth nodded, but inside, she felt something break. Her classrooms had always been places of discovery and independent thought. Now they were becoming centres for indoctrination. A risky meeting. That evening, Elizabeth sat in the back pew of a small, dimly lit chapel, one of the few that still met outside of the official Reich Church. Already, the German Christians movement was working to align Protestantism with Nazi ideology, removing Jewish elements from services and emphasising racial purity. Tonight, a guest speaker had come, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. She had heard of him, a brilliant young theologian who had spoken against Hitler on radio just days after he became Chancellor, only to have his broadcast cut off mid-sentence. Now he moved between churches, speaking quietly but forcefully against the corruption of faith. "The church is not the servant of the state," he said, his voice steady. "It belongs to Christ alone, and if the state asks the church to call evil good, then the church must refuse." The words pierced her. Already the Reich was working to rewrite the 10 Commandments, adding "Honour thy Führer and Master" as a new commandment. Many will tell you that silence is the safest path, that if we just comply, this storm will pass. But what is the cost of that silence? She thought of Lotta's question. She thought of Friedrich's suspicious gaze. She thought of the warning in Herr Schneider's voice. Bonhoeffer's voice grew softer, but stronger. If we do not speak now, there will come a day when it will be too late to speak at all. We must establish a confessing church that remains true to Christ, not to Hitler. His words foreshadowed his future actions, founding a resistance church, teaching at an illegal seminary, and ultimately using his position in German intelligence as cover for resistance activities. The room was silent, and in that silence, Elizabeth made her decision. She understood the risks. Teachers who openly defied Nazi education mandates faced dismissal, imprisonment, or worse. The test. The next morning, Elizabeth stood before her class. "Today, we continue our lesson on history," she said, her voice clear. She turned to the chalkboard and picked up the white chalk. In the corridor, she could hear the new mandatory physical education class, 15% of school time now devoted to creating strong bodies for the Reich. Slowly she wrote, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God." Silence. She turned back to her students. Friedrich was watching her carefully, his young face already showing the hardness of ideological certainty. Lotta, in the back, was smiling, a small flame of independent thought still burning. Elizabeth knew that across Germany, thousands of teachers faced this same daily choice: to comply or resist, to teach hatred or humanity. Some would join the party for safety or advancement. Others would find small ways to preserve truth. A few, like the 1,100 Norwegian teachers who would later defy Quisling's orders to join the Nazi Teachers' Union, would risk everything. And Elizabeth knew. She had made her choice. She didn't know where it would lead, but she knew she couldn't stay silent anymore. The next morning, Elizabeth scanned the room. Lotta's seat was empty. Friedrich smirked. Guess her parents decided she needed to learn the right lessons elsewhere.
That's it for this episode of Synthetic History. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, help us keep these forgotten voices alive by sharing the podcast on social media and with anyone who loves history told in a new way. You can find Synthetic History on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. So, be sure to subscribe, leave a review. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep the past alive. See you in the next episode.